Danny, so you're going to see this later in the presentation. The reason I shamelessly stole this is because I'm not sure if you're aware. I think this is a good story for digital assistants and AI. Cloudflare was apparently down this morning. Has anyone heard of this? I don't understand how all this stuff works, but apparently Cloudflare is a key engine behind OpenAI. So I was trying to spit out images for this presentation this morning on ChatGPT, and it was not working. And apparently that is because Cloudflare was having some issues. So I just stole Danny's images that he put together, and you'll have to explain that later in the presentation, Danny. All right, so we'll start with some introductions here, myself and the panel. Again, this whole webinar is just really with the focus of sharing how everyday people, I think that the panel is extraordinary, but we are just everyday people, are using and leveraging AI, other technology, automations in their everyday work, and in a lot of cases incorporating it into their roles and the actual job descriptions or RACIs that they use in their day-to-day life. Really quickly, I'm Emily Lavasser. I am the current president of the ASCM Twin Cities chapter. I'm also the co-founder and managing director at Waypost Supply Chain Experts. We're based here in the Twin Cities. I will have 20 years in supply chain in January. And I also have the CTSC. So if you're interested in the CTSC certification, let me know. I'm happy to chat about that. I also would like to shamelessly plug really quickly here. You're going to start to see this posted on LinkedIn today. We are having a holiday happy hour, and I would love to see all of you there. So you will see it's an ugly sweater. It's not a contest, but you know, ugly sweater, ugly holiday, whatever it is, your sweater best on Wednesday, December 10th, starting at 4:30 at Bauhaus in northeastern Minneapolis. $15 for members, $30 for non-members. That includes your beverages. Bauhaus does not have food, but they will have a food truck. So that cost does not include your food truck. The truck that they have there that night is going to be the parlor bar. So I would love to have everybody join us. By the end of the day today, you should have an option to register through the website if you would like to attend. All right, I'm going to jump into introduction of the panel members. I can't necessarily see everybody who's here, so I'm really hoping we have all of our panel members. Yes, I see you all. Okay, I see Jennifer and Jesse. So we'll jump in with the introduction of the panel members, and then we'll keep moving here because we have a lot of content to cover over the next 45 minutes or so. So Jennifer, we're going to start with you.
Yes, hello. I am Jennifer Lawrence, not the celebrity. I am the CEO of Vi. We are a marketing agency. We have several locations, employees across really the region. And so what we do is we help companies generate leads and resulting revenue. We use AI a lot, as you can imagine, in what we do for marketing. So excited to be here.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to bring some additional perspective and not just supply chain, right? Because there are, so I heard Jennifer speak at a presentation a month or two back, and what you were talking about, I was just like, oh, wow, I know that's for marketing, but I would really love to think about how we leverage that in supply chain and everyday life. So I thought it was just great perspective to bring some things and maybe have a little bit of thought provocation as we go through the panel. Thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Jesse.
Hello, I'm Jesse Thalen. I'm a consultant focused on supply chain and operations. Been doing this for a while now, and gosh, I've seen a lot of advantages of the AI world to save time, and obviously when you're kind of working in a small business, it's definitely a helpful tool. So look forward to kind of sharing perspectives and examples with you today.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jesse. And last but certainly not least, Danny. Danny, you are muted.
Yep, that helps. Thank you, Emily. My name is Danny Briner. I'm a supply chain digital technology consultant. I've been in supply chain and digital technology, mostly focused on ERPs and the surrounding systems for over 20 plus years. And primarily for me as a solo kind of practicing consultant, I don't necessarily have the resources that I had at bigger organizations in the past, like the Gartners and the Oracle support pages. So I started really utilizing some of the AI pieces as research tools, or also as a solo practitioner. I don't necessarily always have the resources around me to talk to, so I'll use it to flush out ideas. And that's kind of the high level how I got started with things, and kind of having a sounding board in addition.
Excellent. That's perfect. And we're going to progress into the discussion and have each of the panelists talk a little bit about their top or favorite technology tools that they're using and how they're helping, why they're using them, and a little bit about their journeys to implementing. But before we get started with that panel, I would like to share with you all, and this is a true story that happened to a friend of mine, a little bit of a tale of warning around using AI, and in particular, something as accessible as ChatGPT. So this particular friend of mine was trying to get a new iPhone, and they had been struggling a little bit with Apple's customer service, we'll say. And this person had been paying for 8 years for the Apple service. So if their iPhone broke, they should have just been able to order a new one. Well, 6 weeks had gone by and they had been unable to really get any appropriate attention from Apple to get this new cell phone. So this person went to ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT, what should I do? Who's the highest level person I should reach out to at Apple if I'm not getting help from their customer service? Sure enough, they got an email address for the VP of customer service at Apple. And they sent this person 18 emails that had gone back and forth over the previous 6 weeks with Apple's customer service. And they sent and said, hey, I want my new phone. I've been going back and forth with customer service. Nobody can tell me what's going on. What can I do? They got a call on a Sunday morning at 9 a.m. from a gentleman at Apple who said his name was Nelson. He did not appear to have an accent from outside of the US, so he sounded like he was from the US, and he said, hi, I'm the VP of Customer Services Executive Secretary or Executive Assistant, and we got your email, and I just wanted to let you know that we're going to go ahead and process that. It seems like you should get your phone, and so we have that underway. I just need some information from you. So I happened to be with this friend at that moment, and I was in the background going, right? Because all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, ChatGPT gives you an email address and you send all of your correspondence with your account numbers and all your phone number and all the things to some email address that we don't know where this came from. You get a call back at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning saying, oh, we're going to fix this. I'm going to send you your phone. I just need a few things from you. Wait, stop. To learn the exciting conclusion of this story, please stay with us. I will tell you how this story ended. I would love if in the chat you would just do a quick type in of, do you think it was legit? Or do you think it was an identity scam? I'd love to just kind of see the distribution of, do we think this was legit or do we think this was an identity scam? And we'll tell you at the end of the webinar. Okay. So with that framework in mind, we are going to go to Miss Jennifer to talk a little bit about your favorite softwares and your journey to implementing them and how you're using them.
Yes, absolutely. So we've been using AI for a long time in the content side of our business. And so writing, drafting, reviewing, but we are starting our journey in building some AI applications. And so Lovable is one of those that we use. It's amazing in that you can chat to it, just like in ChatGPT, and ask it to build you things. So you can see I'm asking it to build me a go-to-market assessment tool, and I'm asking it to build me a paid media assessment tool. And so that is one that's been pretty cool in building some AI-powered offerings. And so that was actually something, Emily, you talked about when we were meeting. You were talking about different kinds of assessments and how to really start to maximize efficiency. And so building some tools that help you do what you do every day in a way that makes it much more efficient has been something we're just getting into and finding a lot of benefit. I will say the building of this has been not terribly difficult, but where it's becoming really difficult is like, now what do you do with that on the developer side after you have it? And so I'm finding that with AI in general.
Interesting. So
Mhm.
one question I have for you about Lovable, when you mentioned it, it wasn't something that I had heard of before. But the
Mhm.
question I would have is, what makes Lovable a preferable platform over something else? Because I imagine you could do some of these same things in ChatGPT or other platforms.
It's really easy to use. And so that's what I love about it is like you can prompt it to say, hey, build me a tool that asks questions like this. And if it asks this question, then give this output, or like this go to market one is a sliding scale. Like I want to know if clients have these types of problems, and then I want to give them an output at the end of that to say where they fit in there. And so it designs it for you. You can put in your brand colors. It writes all the code. And in this one, you can go in and edit the code. So I can have my programmers go in and say, edit this line of code, edit that line of code, where chat isn't as, you can't do that as easily. And so I like that it's easy to chat, and like the UI and the UX is also pretty customizable.
So when you say programmers, are those like actual people that have like a computer program and can program? Okay, all
Yeah.
right. So it's not people on your team that are just in charge
But
of
you can
building
build this.
it.
Like I built these, and I am not a computer programmer. I built out several tools now where I can go in and do assessments. But it's like, so that's cool, and I love that. And with what I'm finding AI, we're doing the same thing with some video tools and video platforms where it'll like build a video for us. Really cool, can get you a certain ways. And both of those, what I found is that once you get them to like the built part of that, you kind of need another level of technical skill to like take it over the fence.
Awesome. So I'm seeing a
Yeah.
question in the chat. It says, what's the security around Lovable to protect the data?
That's a great question. Lovable, there is a free version of Lovable and a paid version. I don't know all of the security. You can turn it on so it's not publicly available. You can turn it on so it's just like with your data. So I mean, I know that, but I'm definitely having the programmers. I don't have anything in there like super proprietary at this point in time. So I'm kind of learning as we go.
Yeah, and what I will say is this is probably common knowledge, but we also have like a chat GPT for Waypost, for example, that is protected, and our
Mhm.
information is not used to train the models. We also do not put confidential information in it. We don't put client information in it
Yep.
without their express permission, which we have not asked for at this point. So just a great point, I think, always around data protection and privacy. I thought I saw a hand, but we'll go ahead and keep going. So the next one, yes, I know the images are small. They're not meant for you all to read, right? It's just more illustrative. Yeah, so.
Yep. So this one on the right is very similar to Lovable in that you can chat and have it build things. So here I was saying, hey, act as a paid media specialist, build me a generator that can basically scrape and tell me how my paid ads are doing by channel, what's working, what's not working. And so like it builds this for you, similar to Lovable, which I'm like, that's cool, but now it needs a programmer to say, now I need you to sync up with my API of like, what am I, like my actual client and their data, and that you can make protected. I haven't taken that far. So I'm just like, okay, how far can I take this, me doing it? And where do I need a programmer to come in and sort of add to that?
Can you speak a little bit? I know you have a HubSpot one in here too, but can you speak a little bit just to kind of how you have incorporated the technology and AI processes in the everyday work of your team? I think there might be a slide on this too.
I think there might be,
Yeah,
yes.
there we go.
Yep. So we've made a lot of changes in that. So a few big things. We had writers on our team, and we had like digital marketers on our team. And what we were finding is that AI is really enabling that to be like one role. So we took the two different roles and combined them into one role. So that's been something that has helped us. And then in addition to that, on our sort of team, every client has a team of experts. We are putting in there the AI agents and tools that are built and part of that team. So every client has like a brand agent where it's checking it, like we put in our brand guidelines and our brand standards. And so it knows use words like this, not like this, talk like this, not like that. We have a reporting agent that's part of the HubSpot build, which will like run through their system and say what's happening. The content one is very similar to the brand, so that people that were maybe more on the digital side of our agency and not in content can get going a little faster because it has the brand standards and it tells you how to write and what to write based on what we've been doing. And so all of that to say we're sort of like combining roles so that there's less touching of hands because AI is allowing us to do that. We've got a lot of playbooks that we're building by client, and then we're building out agents to put on every single team to get them to go further, faster.
So what I also hear in this, and I think that there are a couple of points here, and I love this because I have found this to be really helpful as well, right? If I have to think about it and I have to think, okay, how am I going to write this outline or how am I going to start this newsletter or something like that? It is a really helpful prompt to get into one of these tools, Copilot or ChatGPT, and just say, even in this tone, right? In such and such tone or blah, 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 write a letter or write something that can get you started. And then I heard once, and this is probably 15 years ago, that our brains tend to process better if we have something to start with. And then you can
100%.
start with it and kind of like whittle away and make changes rather than just starting with a blank slate. It's just harder for our brains to process something. So it's almost like leveraging the tool to get you started with something that you can then say, yeah, I like this. No, I don't like this, you know, and start and it just goes so much faster than the 30 minutes or an hour I would have used to try to figure out an outline for something. It gives it to me.
And we're building a prompt library for our team. So we've taken assessment of all the tasks that we have to do and building the prompt, which helps us. So like if we're going to write a landing page, for example, something we do in our world, or writing a paid ads, like we have a prompt library we pull up and say, okay, fill in these things, act like a blank. Tell me how to do blank or start with blank, you know, and so that like can get them going too, whether or not like prompting is actually it's kind of challenging to think about how to do that. And so we're sort of building the library of prompts as we teach it and learn to do it so that it's repeatable for the other team members. They're not also fumbling through how do I prompt.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I know you can also do some of this stuff on ChatGPT. You can start to train it with prompts and different, I don't know if the right term is bot or anything. I do see a question from Julie around, is Lovable a free service? I think
there
Jennifer,
is a free
you said
version
there
of
is a
it, but
free
you only get a
version.
certain amount of credits. So you can use, and it's pretty generous. You can actually build a few things in the free version of it. It's pretty cool to try out. So I would definitely suggest doing that. And then when you need credits to add to that, like you only get a certain amount of prompts you can do for free. And if you need credits, they're very inexpensive.
I mean, I think it's great to just get in and start with no confidential information, start using the free versions and, you know, trying to figure out, again, if there's something where it takes your brain power to sit and think through creating something, that's a good trigger for maybe I could get in and have an outline. The other one that you also have on here is if it's just an action. And I hear you saying that too, right? A standard action. We always go to this brand format for this client. We always do this type of thing. Use automation. Can you speak just a little bit more to how you're leveraging automation?
I put that in there because I think the words get it's kind of like word soup, right? Like what is AI and what is automation? And so like AI being that where it's like thinking for you and using like its brain, and automation is like the if thens. So building in if thens. Some people call that AI, but it's technically not AI. It really is automation.
Yeah, I really think and frankly, I don't know of so if anybody has thoughts on this, I would love to hear it, but like an available free platform for workflow automation, I think is something that could be really powerful. And what I mean by that is we have this process where if this happens, then we automate the send of this document, or this automatically gets saved here, or this person automatically gets triggered, or you see it a lot in maybe like purchase order or invoice approval type stuff in systems today. But taking that even a step further, I personally am really trying to trigger on like all these little tasky steps that have to happen as part of my day-to-day work. And I'm going, okay, somehow I need to figure out a workflow that just automates this when I push a button, because it does not make sense for me to be saving files to my desktop and sending them in emails and all the things.
Well, and a lot of tools actually have that built in that sometimes we don't even see. So we have a project management tool called Asana, and like that's how we use our workflow day to day of like who does what, but they have AI built in that it can start building sort of that thought process and moving things. We do the same with HubSpot, where it's like an email nurture, right? If they did this and didn't do this, then send them this. And so I think a lot of tools have automation built into it already that maybe we're not even like seeing as that.
Yeah.
Teams has actually been rolling that out recently. So Teams itself has a really has a pretty robust workflow thing that I've got some clients that have started to use. And when you start combining that with Copilot, it's got a lot of
Yes, which I don't want to steal any thunder from Jesse and Danny, but I do have a couple thoughts on like some Microsoft tools that could be used. So we'll come back to that. I think, Jennifer, I think this is the end of my slides for you. Do you have any other kind of like final party? Do you have any comments around either how much capacity or brain power this has unlocked for your team?
You know, it's just shifted it. So it's been interesting. And so like they can do more, but what I am also finding is like it's just time spent differently is what it feels like so far. So, you know, you can get it to go, but then you still have to spend time on the back end refining and polishing. Or you can get it to create you a video, but then you need to spend more time on the back end sort of tweaking, and that makes it really challenging. And so I don't know that it's like there, everything is gone and done. But it takes away a lot of the like the getting started, I guess, has helped a lot for us. And so it certainly won't ever replace people. It just gets them probably going a lot faster down a path and giving them something to react to.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Jesse, we have you next, and this animates. So as you talk through each of the columns, when you're ready to go to the next one, let me know and I'll show the next column.
Yeah, definitely. So the use case that I was trying to leverage the AI functionality for was primarily around supplier discovery. So I was working with a client, very small, very pro AI usage, very commoditized types of products. So the proprietary fear of giving away secrets, not really a big issue there. It's basically service parts and whatnot. And I was just, can we locate more vendors? And so I was leveraging ChatGPT to do like a web scrape to go identify based on basic descriptions, because the part numbers aren't necessarily uniform, to give me other options and suppliers and identify kind of different sourcing opportunities for them. It worked okay. I mean, it was like a C, I'd give it, so average. But it got me in the right direction, and it was kind of interesting to play with. So I see it as a tool that can kind of do massive amounts of research in a short period, but you can't always trust it without having the source behind it, because it can hallucinate, right? There's lots of people putting a lot of data in there. And so prompting is really key, being very specific on the industry you're working in, how you want it to take a perspective. So you're a sourcing specialist within automotive, and you're focusing in on this type of, service levels and whatnot, and go look for this. And essentially that's what really key, and then at the back end, how you want it to come out. Give me bullet points. I want 10 bullet points. I want it to be less than 150 words. I want it to come across in a professional manner. and really trying to simplify the output if you want to, take shortcuts on how you present the data, if you trust it. Making sure the sources are right next to it so you can deep dive and make sure that you validate what you're giving, because obviously my brand would be, just totally destroyed if I give bad data, so I can't fully trust it. So there's always kind of an inspection step. But I definitely see it as a valuable tool to go out and do massive amounts of research that would take hours in the past. And especially when you can walk into, as an operations supply chain person, any type of industry at any time, you have to be able to learn really quickly. And AI does facilitate that, but it's not perfect. It's like a crescent wrench. If you don't know how to use it, you'll round off some nuts. If you use it like a hammer, you could break it, right? So you got to be really wise in your approach and know what it is and use it that manner. So that's how I used it for specifically that use case.
So Jesse, I'm just curious, what would cause you to give it a C? What was good about it and what kept it from being a B or an A?
When I went and validated the data I got and kind of threw it back in front of the client and asked for their perspective, I found that about 70% of it was directionally correct or good enough. And it highlighted different suppliers and then a few new ones. So it wasn't like mind-blowing data, but it helped get me in the right, I would say, spectrum to have the right conversation with my client.
And do you feel like prior to something like ChatGPT for that type of research, would it have just taken a lot longer to get that same kind of result?
Yeah, I would spend more time doing interviews with employees and burning hours of consulting time, right? Trying to figure it out when this gave me a list that they could validate. And like you said earlier, right? AI can trigger your mind and give you that quick sprint head start. It allowed me to do that for my clients. So I saved them money instead of asking them a billion questions because it generated thought-provoking options, right? I would say that when I looked at the data it gave me, obviously you get into little details and it's not perfect, but it did give me a head start. I feel like not knowing the industry completely, but knowing what we needed to do. And I'd also say, like in the sourcing world, I mean, I don't know how many of you guys are procurement, but a lot of it's who you know and who's the expert, and your experience really drives a lot of your sourcing decisions. And for me, going into industries that I don't always know, but they know me as an expert in my field, that helps me get there faster.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
The risk analysis portion was kind of interesting to play with too. So one thing that I noticed too is a lot of the parts coming across from, Asia with the different tariffs, it created a lot of different issues that you can't really forecast. And it allowed me to kind of look across and go, what's the options and what's the risk of using different vendors and how do we want to approach it? And it summarized a lot of things that are happening very quickly because obviously, I've been an import export. I by far would not call myself an expert, but I'm close sometimes. And I think this helped me kind of take what I knew and apply it and go, okay, how much risk is it really there? And what's the different options? I think with things changing quickly, being able to consume lots of data from lots of different sources and then compare it to the actual regs, it gives you a sense of where things are going. I would say right now, though, in that realm, like with import export, it's impossible to be right. So guessing in a good direction is pretty good. So I appreciated the speed it gave me because you got to give an answer sometimes. And honestly, by the time you figure it out, it changes right now in that realm. So
I think it's also kind of a great checklist too, right? Because when you're being asked to do something like this or pull together any sort of like a risk mitigation or business continuity, there may, or in most cases, may not be necessarily a checklist of like, here are the things you need to kind of think about here. And so it's kind of good to go, oh yeah, I got to remember, maybe I need to dig a little bit deeper into that. Connor? I'm sorry, Matt. Sorry, Matt,
No,
Connor.
that's right. Call me Matt or Connor, either one is fine. Hey, Jesse, just question for you on the risk analysis there. So what was your approach for the prompts? Were you primarily just looking at like country of origin, like a list of different country of origin and asking for the risk profile on each of those?
I'm scared to death to put too much data into this thing because I don't know where it ends up. So yeah, I was very top level, like country origin, and I feel like it's recording me and then eventually going to come like hit me over the head with what I say. So I do take a very risk averse approach, and I try not to share too much data. And like my first example, if my client wasn't like, hey, go all out. I know you play with this AI stuff. I wouldn't have dared go into it, right? But since I had the opportunity, I'm working with another client right now, and I wouldn't dare put their data in there because it's just not the right fit. And so yeah, I stayed very high level. I'm like, it's coming from here, it's going to, there. What's it look like? What's changing? Give me a summary. You're basically a tariff and import export, professional. Give me your perspective on this and what's it look like, and that's kind of how I approach it. And then on the prompts, it's being like very tight, like, keep your answers to be within focus and scope. Don't give me this world of garbage. I need like a paragraph of good stuff, and limit the words. And then if you don't see what you need, then ask it to expand it. And I find that prompting is what really can drive the efficiency or the waste. But to be fair, I've jumped into Claude and said, hey, write me a business plan for a whole business, and went back and read through it for fun. So I guess I play on both extremes.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
I just thought of one thing. For those of you who are in the import-export world, Ryan, you may, and if you participated in Summit this last year, you may recall a gal named Shannon Bryant with Trade IQ. I just typed it into the chat. So Shannon actually launched a somewhat AI-oriented tool. I don't know how the guts of it work, but for a very, very reasonably inexpensive price, you could put some information in around particularly your import information, and understand, if you are optimizing the way that you're doing your customs declaration from a tariff perspective, or if you have some other opportunities. So I would recommend checking that out, because I think it's like $50 an entry, which is pretty cheap if there's a way that you could learn a different way to do a little bit better on the tariff situation. Okay, and final one here, Jesse.
Yeah, this one was kind of interesting. I was trying to kind of stretch it out a little bit and try to get some more strategic insight on what's going to happen with the market, because obviously with the raw materials and the different, I would say, regions of the world, deciding to share or not share is kind of an interesting perspective to look at. So I did do this one more for fun. I kind of said, hey, let's look at different raw materials and what would it have for an ill effect on, basically my raw components, and can you model it out? And it was interesting to look at. I mean, I think it's one of those things that you not only have to train it, but you have to repetitively train it and educate it to be very focused. And I didn't spend a ton of time on it, but the capability is definitely there. And I think when you look at it, if you're not detailing out any types of really confidential type of data or proprietary data, I think there's something very valuable to use that tool to basically get insights on where things might be going. I'm sure there's other ways that are more efficient, but it was just interesting to play with, like, with platinum and gold and the different effects and metal prices and whatnot. It just seems like there's a lot of opportunity in the future. I don't know if anybody has a specific app that does that, like you mentioned, Emily, but I'm sure there's something out there. Every time I get to the basic questions like this, then somebody already went and created a whole business around it, because there's so many billions of dollars being thrown at AI aimlessly right now. And it'll be interesting to see who lands and succeeds on it. But I wanted to throw that out there for anybody.
Yeah. If anybody on the call has suggestions of companies that you've worked with or are aware of that kind of offer the same kind of thing, I feel like I have seen companies that have advertised, I'll see it in a LinkedIn scroll or something around, predict the future impact of your materials purchasing or something. I can't think of one off the top of my head. So
I think day traders are using it a lot.
Which one?
Try to get it. Day traders and stock traders are using a lot of AI right now. And I have a feeling that might be kind of the realm to look for those specific raw materials, especially the higher value ones. But it's kind of interesting playing with it and saying, hey, model it out. What would it do this component? And it's an interesting output. It's not perfect again though, right? So be aware.
Trust but verify, for sure. So before we go into Danny's section, I'm going to give another chapter of this Apple story, this Apple Chat GPT story. So in the call with Nelson on Sunday morning, Nelson was very pleasant and he had some information, and he said, I'm going to go ahead and close out this ticket, this Apple ticket that's bounced around to 18 different people, and I'm going to open a new ticket, and we'll get this phone shipped to you with this new ticket. And then he had wanted to send us, he said, I will send you a link for you to verify your credit card information. And I'm in the background going, not do that, right? And so Nelson paused a minute and he said, you know, I can't send the link, so I'm going to have to send it tomorrow. But this ticket is closed out and I've opened a new one. And so my friend got off the phone and went into their app because they had like the Apple service app or something, and they could see that the ticket had been closed out. So my friend was like, well, it must be legit, right? Because the ticket's closed out. And after an hour, we were talking and I said, what if that person called Apple because they have all of your information from those email correspondences? What if they called Apple and closed out your ticket? ... I would love to know, as we're progressing, throw in the chat, do you think it's a scam or do you think it's legit? So far, I've seen mostly scam. All right, and then on to Danny. All right, I'm gonna let you kind of take this from here.
Thanks, Emily. Ignore the title. You flubbed the title there.
Oh, sorry about that.
When I kind of really went out on my own, one of the things that I started seeing most of all or needing some help with was really the benchmarking pieces of things. And so there's a few things. This actually started with my previous consulting firm, which was an analytics firm that was trying to drive and create a software that would eventually use AI to give supply chain analytics. And we'll skip that for now. But one of the key things that we kept hearing from customers and clients is, well, what is good? How do we know what's good? So as I went out on my own, I started thinking about, well, how do I get benchmarks for companies, for different organizations, for different industries? So I started looking at it from that perspective, and I have found the AI, especially from ChatGPT, very useful in that. The first thing I did, I had a client actually fairly recently come to me and say, hey, we're getting ready to open a new facility. We need to put our ERP on there. We want to do it right this time. This is how much we have. Is that going to work? And my first thought was, nope, you are way off. Having done a lot of these projects, I knew they were way off, but I didn't really have the evidence behind it to back it up. So I gave them the number I thought it was. And I said, you know, I really need to go back and validate that. So one of the things I did is I went into ChatGPT in this case and said, what is the average cost of an ERP build or of an ERP implementation? And it spits out you an answer. Then what I really worked through, and we talked about prompts, is using that to really refine the search. And I'll kind of come back to that a couple of times and saying things like, what if it's this specific ERP? What if it's just these modules? Or what if it's this type of business? And the more you prompt it, the better details you could get. So I was able to take that information and say, hey, the number I gave you was pretty close. Here's a little bit more specific range based on your type of business, based on the modules that you plan on using. Here's what it should cost. And here's where that cost breakdown comes from, right? And that was kind of the first real powerful deep dive I did through AI for a client. But since then, I've really started to use it for quickly assessing benchmarks, right? I mentioned kind of up front the idea of once you're in solo practice and you don't have all the resources behind you that you may have had for larger firms or working for specific clients, I have found it difficult sometimes to get information out of it, right? I don't have a Gartner membership to get those metrics. And again, I've been around long enough to know what it should be, but things change. So being able to say, you know, I'll use just a general turns metric that all of us in supply chain are pretty familiar with. Being able to say, hey, what's a world-class turns metric? It's going to spit out one thing. Well, now I have a client that's, okay, I have a commercial products client that has 1,000 retail locations. What should their distribution turn center be? Or I have an electronics client that has 4 manufacturing facilities. What should the turns be for the organization? What should the turns be based on their product groups, et cetera? And really deep dive that into benchmarking from an industry perspective. That's kind of what I mean here by the real fine tuning of those benchmarks and expectations by industry. It is really powerful. I've also used it in kind of defining roles and responsibilities and helping to write job descriptions. I found it very useful too. And I think Emily touched on it earlier. Sometimes starting from scratch is really difficult. So getting that first piece, it'll spit out something and you'll go, oh, I don't like that at all. But here's 3 pieces that it's powerful. Oh, now I know how to think about this. And I think Emily really captured it well with that statement, is getting started there was really powerful. And that's kind of how I've been using it. And I wanted to go back to something Jesse said as well that isn't in my presentation or slide specifically, but it aligns well with saving time and processes. I've looked into that a lot as well, with certain softwares where you might not understand how they work, but you know the basics and you might need more details. Hey, where do I find this? I'm a JD Edwards guy, but I have a SAP client. How do I find this in SAP or Epicor or Infor or any of the other type of ERPs that may be out there? I found extremely useful. Same thing with concepts and things that you may be familiar with. I was trying to help a client, or I'm working with a client to help develop some KPIs, and they wanted some PPV information, right? Well, PPV's got 2 or 3 different type of formulas, so I can just go in and say, hey, how in this ERP is it best to calculate PPV? And it spits out something, which is a great starting place. But, and this will lead into our conversation a little bit later, I also have noticed that there are, to Jesse's point, a lot of problems. In fact, in one of the formulas, I happen to know, well, that's not right. That table is not what they're looking for. So right away, I know, all right, I'm 75% of the way there, but now I've got to dive in further. So I always throw that out as a challenge to watch out for as well.
Definitely. And I really like a lot of the things that you have in here, because I think that's one of the most common questions that we get, to be honest, is around, well, what's benchmark inventory turn performance for us? Or questions like that. And again, you do have to be a little bit cautious about, making sure you're not hallucinating, but it is helpful in finding that information pretty quickly. I would definitely recommend it for something like that. And Danny, I know, so this is one of the images that I shamelessly stole from you. I thought this was cool too, because if you all haven't played around with this a little bit, creating images in an OpenAI tool is pretty cool.
Yep. And so again, this is another big use I found, whether it's for client presentations or social media posts, especially around LinkedIn and making sure you're getting your content and idea across. I've actually really enjoyed using kind of the OpenAI tools for that as well. And honestly, my kids are playing around with it more than almost I do these days, which is pretty neat. But I took the time to say, okay, I need graphics that represent what I'm thinking. How do I do this? And so the first one being simply on prioritization, right? Just to kind of talk you through how these came about and the prompts behind them, right? I said, prioritization is really just where effort and importance intersect. Well, can I get a street sign at the intersection of effort and importance? And boom, spit it right out. Yeah. Sometimes you get lucky on the first try. That was a great example of it. It's like, well, that was pretty simple. The second one was actually one of my favorite in talking about excess and obsolescent inventory. I did a post on this a while back because I was having a conversation with my wife about a bunch of frozen bananas in the fridge or the freezer. And it was, I swear I'm going to make banana bread. I'm like, well, we also have a thing of rotten bananas on the counter. These ones have been in there for how long? Are we just going to throw these in there too? And they really made this parallel to, slob inventory and excess and obsolete. And every client I've ever had will say, oh, we're going to use that. I swear we're going to use that. I'm like, it's been sitting there for 3 years. It's probably time to toss it. So I had this image of, how do I get the frozen bananas in the warehouse, right? And go to ChatGPT. And
I love it. Love it. I think this is important too, just conscious of time, Danny. I would love to have you talk through this. I'm going to give you another chapter before our exciting conclusion. So in the Apple journey, Monday, my friend got an email from Nelson at Apple that said, did not ask for credit card information, not have any link to verify anything. It just said, your case has been opened. We are in the process of sending you a phone. My friend took this email and their cell phone to an Apple store and asked an Apple employee at the Apple store if they could verify whether or not it was a legit address and a legit email. The Apple store could not verify it, would not verify it, and could not get into their account to tell them if there was any legit traffic from the Apple side. I promise the next chapter is the final conclusion of whether or not it was legit or a scam. Okay, so Danny, let's have you run through this real quick in just a couple minutes, and then we will circle up for any other questions and the exciting conclusion of the Apple story.
Awesome. Well, this kind of runs into the conversation that we alluded to a little bit earlier about challenges in AI. And I actually wrote this post. This was more of notes for me, but I guess Emily decided to include it. I wrote this post a while back, and hearing from lots of clients, as I mentioned, oh, we've got to have AI. Well, I'm the one who, as much as I've just told you how much I use it, I also don't think everybody's ready for it, right? So there's some things that everybody needs to consider to see, are you ready for it, right? Are your processes documented and repeatable? Do you have high customer service levels? Is your inventory appropriate to maintain levels? Is it excessive? Do you really have metrics to measure performance? And are you confident in those metrics, right? If you're not, your organization probably isn't ready for AI in the level that people think they need it. And this is where I was at my previous company. We have so many people that have said, well, I need to be able to ask AI, what's the UPH level for John Smith on the floor? Well, that's great if all your data is there and your metrics are great and you know that your data is well structured and you have a data lake that has it. But if you don't, AI is going to tell you John Smith is there. That doesn't help you. So it's something to really consider in one of the challenges in AI. And the real push for AI is, and I always like to use, you've got to do the blocking and tackling first, right? If you're not doing the blocking and tackling, you're not ready for AI. And that's something I try to instill with a lot of my clients that I talk to, especially when they're like, well, we need to get to AI level. Well, you may not be there yet. So let's talk about getting your data clean first.
Yeah, I think spot on, Danny. I think that's what we just continue to see when people always ask us the question, what are we seeing for, AI adoption and so forth? And the answer is not a lot. Because the reality is most companies are still really focused on that foundational people, process, data. And then we can get to technology, right? But we got to figure out that people, process, data piece and get that really humming before we can super leverage AI. I think a great example is a couple of years ago, I was talking to the CFO of a medical device company for braces, orthopedics and stuff like that. And they carry a lot of inventory in what they call trunk stock, right? So their sales reps have inventory in their cars, or they have inventory at different clinics and facilities. And they thought maybe they could somehow leverage data modeling at the time, because this was 2 years ago. So at that point, AI wasn't a thing. But data modeling and demand sensing and leveraging things like weather, because it might not surprise you to find out there are a lot more wrist braces and knee braces and all the things in the mountains when it's a snowy winter, right? So could we tie some of these inventory needs to other factors? And the reality was, when you really got into the foundation of it, they really couldn't even manage their inventory or have great visibility to their inventory as it was. So then trying to tie that to a plan, they didn't really have a planning system. So trying to tie that to a planning system that correlated to external factors was just kind of a step too far. So as you mentioned, Danny, they went back to the foundations of, okay, let's solidify the people processes, get the data clean, and then we can start looking at how can we leverage that. So, exciting conclusion. I think that's it for our deck. And I really want to thank our panelists for taking the time today and sharing their journey. We will have a Q&A, but before we have a Q&A section, I will just let you all know it was 100% legit. That cell phone showed up from FedEx on Wednesday and it was signed for and it worked. And all the way up to the point of, I questioned whether it was a legitimate FedEx driver. I questioned whether it was a legitimate phone or if they were going to turn on the phone and it was just going to ingest all of their information. But it was totally 100% legit. So apparently there is a protocol whereby you can get Apple's VP of customer service email and send them a message about your poor customer service experience. So I am not endorsing this. I would not recommend it. I think the dangers far outweigh the benefits of this situation, but 100% it was totally legit. And Apple, they rectified the situation. So to Apple's credit. Okay, so we've got just a couple minutes left here. Any questions? Thoughts? I would definitely take the better safe than sorry approach, Lisa. I agree with you 100%. Don't ever do that. Any final comments? Oh, William, let's see. Can you recommend AI tools besides Microsoft that will help with tracking purchase orders and follow-up activities?
So I've recently come across one that is more of an automation tool, not necessarily AI, but SourceDay is a tool I've recently come across that does a lot of the automation of PO, at least from a PO updates and status. It kind of connects the customer and you as a vendor or as a manufacturer and the vendor, sorry. That is kind of a step towards that. Definitely on tracking and purchase order activities, it has the ability to enter all of that. That's something that just came across my desk.
Did you say SourceDay? SourceDay?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, SourceDay.
Okay, interesting. What are your thoughts about a software solution for AI like Coupa that have both generative and agentic AI in their solution? Good question, Shannon. And the ability to build custom agents. I don't know if we know the answer to that. I think I can tell you, Danny, Jesse, Jennifer, if you have thoughts on this, I think Coupa's really expensive. So anytime anybody's charging a lot of money for that kind of stuff, I would assume they have some pretty decent capabilities. But it's all early, right?
The only time I've run into it thus far, it goes back into the data behind it. It's an expensive tool, but you still have to have the correct data. So if you're looking for some historical information and to do that kind of deep dive and on what you have historically, it may not be right. Now, if it helps fix your processes from a go forward perspective, I think it could be very powerful. But to Emily's point, Coupa is very, very expensive, but and it's all on how the data sits. And if you come now, that being said, if your company has good data, has a good data lake, has potential there, I think it would be very powerful.
If anyone would like to comment or correct me on this, but someone recently told me the way to think about agentic is think and act. So the system can think and act, but it has to take, to your point, data and information to think and act, and it has to be taught how to act, right? So if you don't have effective data or processes to teach it what information to use to think and how to act, probably it's a little bit limited.
The stuff I've kind of heard about that would relate to that is people using it as like a receptionist and then having it go and set up scheduling in their, different schedules for clients. I've heard a little bit about that. It seems like really administrative, simple tasks, it would make sense. I think when you get to complicated decision making, I mean, Danny's nailed it on the head like 40 times, and we talked before this, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And I've yet to go to any company, big or small, where I can honestly say there isn't a person manipulating the data at some level to try to get the right outcome. And that's the value of people, right? So you got to understand you wouldn't have highly paid employees to make brilliant decisions if you could just push a button and AI would fix everything. So it's got to be a complementary thing, right? You got a person, you got a tool, and it's got to be a task that really can be accomplished in the right way, I guess. Automation's unique. You just can't automate everything. And counting on it to get rid of people, that's a risky endeavor. And I think a lot of people are betting on the wrong category right now, to be frank. So,
well, and one thing I know we talked about beforehand to piggyback on Jesse's comment is what you hear a lot with automation is people scared that it's going to take their jobs, right? Oh, if I do this, my system comes in that's going to take my job. And I always go back to if you're the person who knows how to use that system, how to maintain it, and how to optimize it, you're not going to lose your job. And even AI at its best right now cannot make decisions that a person can. And so learning to blend the two, I think, is a much better approach for every day in their organizational life.
and take another approach to that too, right? Add on, if they get rid of you because they think AI can solve it, is that really the right company for you? You probably don't want to be aligned with them anyways because they're making really bad decisions.
What I will say, and then we'll just end here, is every way that I've used AI or other automation has gotten rid of work that really did not have any value for me to do. And I have been able to immediately fill that with, wow, look at all this other stuff that I should have been doing, or now I can do better. So
Absolutely.
So I think with that in mind, we have, I do see one question about proof of attending this webinar for continuing education credits. I'm not 100% sure, to be quite honest. I did see that there were 61 attendees, and I thought there were 61 people registered. So I think in my mind, we would just go mark everyone as having attended. But I don't know exactly how we track it, to be honest. So with that being said, thank you very much, everybody, today for joining and for engaging in the conversation. Here's the information for the panelists. Please reach out if you want to talk any further about how they're using it or how you could potentially use it. Feel free to reach out to me, and I hope to see all or most of you at the happy hour on December 10th at the Bauhaus. Thanks again. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.